everyone. Hope you are having a really good day. Hope you liked the break and pizza. You may recognize me from a couple of previous meetups. For those who see me first time, my name is Paweł. Currently, I'm working at FlightRadar24 as a lead iOS engineer. I've been meddling with iOS for better part of last 10 plus years, and there's still something exciting and new to learn. Today will not be a usual topic of my liking. We are not gonna dive into very obscure Swift workings, random code details, and we will not try to break our apps in very mysterious ways. Today we'll talk about accessibility in iOS and in SwiftUI. And this is by no means a comprehensive guide. This is not a presentation with foolproof best practices that you should start applying. It's simply a starting point. It's something that I was regretfully missing in my iOS coding journey, something that I and we as a team started working on fairly recently. We are still learning, we are still experimenting, we are still finding out stuff. We still have a way to go, but as all journeys, this also starts with a first step. And a couple months ago, you may have received an email from Apple or a notification when you logged into App Store Connect that starting with iOS 26, they will start introducing this accessibility nutrition labels. It's something very similar to the tracking nutrition labels, or however that would, privacy nutrition labels, I think those were called, where you indicated which data you track from your device or about your users, and they have very clear access to this when looking at your app at App Store in App Store. So they are taking a step further. Now apps also contain this, which indicates which assistive technologies that are available on our devices the app supports. So now this kind of poses a very first question. What does it mean that the app supports an assistive technology, right? Because, for example, VoiceOver is something that's built into the phone. You can just turn it on and it's there. It kind of works. So Apple defined supporting an assistive technology as being able to complete the most common task using said technology. So, for example, in a to-do app, the most common task is creating a to-do entry, marking it as done. If you can achieve it using VoiceOver or speech recognition or other assistive technologies, then you can, when filling in the form, you should be able to mark this as something that you have in your app. Okay, but so does this mean that we need to start modifying our phones to be able to actually experience the assistive technologies? And the truth is that you really don't need to change anything in your daily setup, because a lot of the accessibility features that you have on your device can be set up in Control Center to have as a very quick, very easy turn on, turn off. Well, turn on, check your app, see how it works, assert, adjust, move on, and turn the feature off. Use your phone the way you like. They are a bit hidden because most of them are at the very bottom, but they are there. One setting I heavily recommend adding here is the text size picker, because it allows you to basically switch the accessibility text sizes for the app you are currently using or for the entire system. So you could very well have increased font sizes just for the app you are developing. This does not affect your day-to-day, your TikToks, your Instagrams. They won't suddenly be extra large, but you can still have this constant reminder when you are using the app you are developing. How does it look if I increase the text size just a notch, or if I increase it 2 notches, to see if the layout holds, if it's still usable. There is one accessibility feature that I kind of wouldn't recommend putting in Control Center for that, and it is the before-mentioned voiceover. Because, well, accessing Control Center with voiceover enabled is...
Voiceover on, settings.
Yeah.
Accessibility, back button.
Yeah, so...
voiceover off.
This was hardly visible here, unfortunately, but the way I have it set up, the way I recommend to everyone starting with experimenting with voiceover and how it works, is to have an accessibility shortcut. This means that basically, whenever you click 3 times on your power button or the side button, however Apple calls it nowadays, you can switch one of the options you select in settings. VoiceOver is super nice to have there. Very, very important thing that this gives you is that if you end up in a place in your app, or maybe in the system, if you did something really wrong while learning the gestures of VoiceOver, is that you can instantly turn it off and regain the control that you know, the basic touch control of your device. And there's one more tool we can very easily use. This is bundled with Xcode. This is Accessibility Inspector. Basically allows you to select components of any app, including the ones on your simulator. Oh, this one is a bit not too loud, but you can basically navigate through elements as if you were using VoiceOver there. So you can do this even without taking your phone out of your pocket, directly on your Mac in your simulator. Take apart your app and see how it reacts with accessibility. OK, so let's take a quick overview of how we can actually start supporting some of the features, some of the things that Apple has included in its nutrition labels. And a very easy, very, very straightforward first one is supporting dark mode and sufficient contrast. Sufficient contrast may be a bit harder. Dark mode, as everyone knows, was introduced a couple years ago. Everyone was excited, especially Android people. They had a lot of laughs for us that time. Yeah, there was a very nice jellyfish video alongside it. So basically, if you use asset catalogs in your app, then supporting dark mode and high contrast is as simple as toggling these 2 things. Selecting that your asset has more than one appearance, that it also supports dark mode, and maybe that it supports high contrast too. You basically provide all the variants to the system, and then it will automatically pick the one that fits the best for current user settings on their device. And if your assets or your color schemes are coming from backend, or maybe you, for whatever reason, are not using asset catalogs, then you have these 2 environment variables that you can use to programmatically read which color scheme the user has selected, if they are using increased contrast or not, and then you can act accordingly in your code and select proper color, proper assets, proper way of presenting data. And so with contrast, you could naturally get the question, what does it mean to have sufficient contrast? So it means that when you look at the content, you can easily, without strain, read it on the background that you have selected. And web content accessibility guidelines define a couple of levels of compliance for this, depending on whether you have normal text, bold text, if there's some images. And the basic support basically requires you to have the contrast score of 4.5 to 1. And if you have designers in your team, they probably know way more about this than I, and can already make sure that your color palette that you use in the app has enough contrast to follow the guidelines. And if you are maybe a solo developer or working in a smaller team, there's like a ton of sites that you can basically do what's done here, put into colors, and get the score out of it with some clear showing of how your foreground color looks against your background color and if it matches the score. Another thing to consider when you are working with colors in your app is color blindness. So if there are parts of your app that you differentiate using only colors, it may not be as easy to differentiate these things for some of your users. So you should consider adding some other indicators. And if they are not always preferred in your flows and designs, there's another variable that controls this. The system can tell you if the user has opted in for differentiating without color alone. And a very nice example for this is the Files app, where with this turned off, all the tags are presented as circles. With it turned on, each color of the tag has a distinct shape. There's a lot of other properties that we can inspect in our code to see what the user opts in accessibility settings. If they want reduced transparency, if they have inverted colors, which is a bit tricky because the smart invert tries to figure out where you have images and will preserve them. But maybe you have some custom drawn views that it won't pick out automatically, so you can also opt out of it if it makes sense. The show shapes is a funny one because it basically, in old iOS versions, it, for example, added underlines to buttons to make them more stand out more from the rest of your content. With liquid glass, it makes the borders a bit more prominent. Last group is related to more of video content. So if the users prefer to maybe not have videos autoplay, or maybe they have some epileptic sensitivity to flashing lights, so they opt into reduced flashing lights. These are all things we can consider to accommodate them. Now, one of the big things when it comes to accessibility considerations is text scaling, because there's a lot of the picker that you saw earlier allows you to go way up to 300% in text size. So this may be very tricky to support in apps because the layout basically goes haywire then. So take this with a bit of grain of salt. It's a good idea to try to track this category, try to see which categories, if any, your users are using, and then focus on the ones where you can have the most wins for. And obviously, if you are using system fonts, then you have the scaling behavior of the font out of the box. When you are using custom fonts, you need to help the system a little bit and tell it which system semantic font your use case relates to. And what this means is that it will scale the font proportionally the same way as it scales the system default font in that use case. So I found this very, very nice resource made by a Stack Overflow user that I know only to be Damien. Thank him for that, or her. The QR here links to the full thing. I am not sure if it works due to the Cloudflare issues. It worked yesterday, but today is a new day. So there is a huge table there showing how the text sizes change between the different accessibility text sizes that users can choose. And what this means for our custom fonts is that, as in previous example, if we had it set relative to large title and the default size was 25, if we go to extra, extra large, the system font would scale up by around 12%. And the same behavior will be applied to our custom font here. So it will go up from 25 to 28 points in size. The same goes in reverse. And the biggest topic probably for today, voiceover. This feature helps people with vision impairment to use your apps by speaking the contents out loud and allows them to navigate over the app using dedicated gestures. It does a pretty good job of figuring out the sequence in which to move from one element to another and figuring out the context of your content. But we'll see what we can do to help it out a little bit when it falls short. And to start using VoiceOver, because it may seem like something very hard, the phone behaves a little bit differently at first. You cannot, swiping left and right does not switch your home screens. Something speaks constantly to you. It's a bit of cognitive overload at first, but I very much recommend breaking through that wall and taking an effort to learn those. This is a very simple set of a couple of basic gestures that you need to start using VoiceOver and navigating your device with. The last two are probably the trickiest ones because figuring out on your own that you need to use 3 fingers to scroll up and down is not easy. And figuring out the Z gesture yourself to escape from a screen is yet another thing. The escape means that it will basically, if you have a model presented or a folder open on your home screen, the Z gesture, double finger Z gesture is basically going back. Close the model, go back in navigation, allows the users to easily navigate without reaching some far off close button. Okay, so as I mentioned, it may not always figure out the proper content, proper ordering of elements, or you may want to have some custom ordering of elements because your UI, your interface, kind of needs that. And
This will be read first, then this, and this last.
yeah, so if you start using the accessibility, start writing .accessibility in SwiftUI, you will get a ton of modifiers. We'll go through a couple of them. And in terms of ordering stuff, this looks like something that should work, right? Accessibility sort priority, we say, OK, I want this to be read first. But we kind of also think that if this is read first, then the next element should be the one below it. That's like, because VoiceOver tries to read the elements from top leading to bottom trailing content following the language order. But accessibility sort priority is basically a simple hack that pushes a view to a top of the list of elements that it has. So using this requires a bit of caution, because it may end up, VoiceOver may end up jumping around and create a very uneasy experience for your users. I'd recommend using it only in some very specific views where you basically assign the priority to all components so that you control the order then. A better way to have a dedicated starting point for your VoiceOver experience is to use a property wrapper called accessibility focus state. That's a mouthful of a name, but it works very similar to the focus state property wrapper that we use, for example, for text fields. Basically, you're telling VoiceOver that you get programmatic control to tell VoiceOver, hey, please focus on this element at this point. And then it will follow the natural order that it figured out, because you are not modifying the list of elements it has. You are saying, hey, please jump to this element, and then go up or down in the list. And there's one more place where we can use that property wrapper. So consider this flow.
Main content. Open sheet button. Extra content in sheet. Main content.
And it feels kind of weird that we reach the button. In this example, it's just the next element, right? But in your real app, it could have been something way deeper in the flow. We reached the button, we opened a modal content, and after closing that content, we are back at the top. And the user needs to dig down, go deeper to find the place they left off. Obviously, sometimes it makes sense. Maybe that modal was used to add a new element on top of your list. So then it obviously makes sense to go back to the top. But sometimes, if it doesn't, you can use the property wrapper we saw to make sure that your user stays in the place where they were. Because this
Main content. Open sheet button. Extra content in sheet. Open sheet button.
And they are back where they left off. They are free to continue their navigation. This is especially useful if that sheet is used to maybe provide some supplementary information, some kind of explanation of what the data means. Then you kind of want to keep the users going forward. So what if our content looks more like this? Does this mean that we have multiple views presenting the same data? This is usually a case in our apps where we have lists and users move through them. Does this mean that VoiceOver users kind of need to navigate through each of these labels one by one to reach the one they need? And obviously, it kind of doesn't, because there are ways to group things together. So our user view can define its container to be a new accessibility element. And there is like a hidden thing here, because by default, it will ignore your children. And ignoring children is not always a good idea. So you need to be aware of how you want the accessibility element to behave. By default, it will ignore everything. So basically, it will discard any accessibility settings that the subviews had. It will treat the container as a new accessibility element. It will focus on it, but it won't give you anything than that. It will just be a block that users can select. But we can also combine, which is gluing together the accessibility of subviews. So in context of our user view, all the labels we had there, 4 labels, they will be glued together and read one after the other. This is really nice and really useful. It allows you, if you have some data blocks, to have them as a single element and read aloud as a single thing. And the last option, to contain the children, this is a bit tricky because it will still allow you to move through each child element alone, but it affects the sort order from like global screen perspective, and it's best illustrated with this example. So if you had a two-column layout, then although it could seem that VoiceOver should move from view to view the way you have them in code, it actually follows that language order you have, a language direction for your user. So it will jump from one column to the other in the default behavior. But if we wrapped our vstacks here with accessibility element children contain, it will group them the way we probably want here. So it will allow you to move through the first stack first, and then jump to the other one and move through stuff there. I also mentioned that VoiceOver tries to infer context to the best of its ability. So let's see how it handled some common speed units.
Speed, 20 km/h. Speed, 20 kts. Speed, 20 kilometers per hour.
So it figured out only the last one. And I don't think I used any, very random units here. Knots and hour notation of kilometers per hour are fairly common. I do know from what I'm learning about it that it also takes into consideration your language and region, and there are specifics to this. But if you really want to make sure that it does what it says what you want, or maybe you have some domain-specific abbreviations in your app that may not make full sense to VoiceOver users, it's super simple. You just assign an accessibility label to a view, and then it will discard the content and read the label you have specified. Please remember to localize the accessibility labels if you have localizations in your app, because it feels weird if a VoiceOver reads some things in Polish, then jumps to English with Polish pronunciation or vice versa. If you ever had Siri read out a text message to you, you probably know how it sounds. And using accessibility labels is obviously the way to go if you use accessibility element with while ignoring its children, because then you provide a very custom description of what the content is. If our UI looks kind of like this, so we have some data block with a visual indicator that it can probably be expanded, right? And for whatever reason, it is not a button. Buttons play way nicer with VoiceOver by default. If it's not a button, then how can we allow VoiceOver to interact with this element? We know the first step already. We tell it that we want this to be a combined element. And then we can give it a hint that it actually is a button. And then a more hint this time for our user to indicate what will happen once they activate the element. And as last component, we give the accessibility action. You can use the accessibility action to maybe trigger a bit different flows for accessibility users, if it makes sense. And then
active users, 20, in last 15 minutes, button. Expand for more information.
The hint is always read after a short pause, and may be omitted if users navigate to an element often. So there's some VoiceOver tries to make this experience easier, not to always read all of it, but adding traits to indicate what the view is or what it does is a very important thing. And all the previous examples kind of worked with UI from UI perspective, with a bit more of a static configuration of voiceover and accessibility. But if you ever need to trigger an announcement from a bit more of a logic part of your code, so for example, some background task has finished processing, or a download has completed, or maybe you received a message and it's more important to say something than just play a chime, then you can use basically post a notification, an announcement notification, and VoiceOver will read out whatever you pass in there. To sum up and repeat a little bit, this was definitely not a comprehensive guide. This topic is, as all of them come, very broad. There's a lot of things to consider, and this barely scratches the surface of accessibility considerations, and implementing it in our apps. It may seem like a daunting task, but again, it all starts with a first step. And I believe that getting familiar with basic concepts of how accessibility works on your platform is as good a step as any. It's also, I think, important to note that more and more legal work is done to ensure accessibility standards are met. For example, the European Union introduced the EAA, European Accessibility Act, which was implemented in country-level laws in 2023, and it's being enforced starting this year, which currently applies to public entities. So private entities are not yet bound by it, but it's good to keep track of such things to see where we may start having some requirements on us. This QR code here is for very, very extensive web content accessibility guidelines for mobile. It's still a draft document. It's a living document. If you want a deep dive, I recommend taking a look. Don't be overwhelmed by it. It has pretty nice. What does it have? Pretty nice table of contents. So you can jump to the things that you want to see and learn about. And that's all, folks.